So, do me a quick favor, and do this with me right now. Just take a really deep, full breath in. Okay, now let it out. Right there, you just consciously engage what is honestly one of the most complex, just absolutely incredible systems in your entire body.
And get this, a normal person completes that exact cycle approximately 20,000 times every single day. Literally, 20,000 times. It's this continuous, completely invisible exchange that we have with the environment around us, and it never stops.
Welcome to this Explainer. Today, we're going to explore the dynamic journey of a single breath of air. We're going to trace its path from the outside world down into your lungs and all the way into your bloodstream to discover exactly how the human respiratory system works.
Okay, let's dive right into our itinerary. First, why do we breathe? Then we'll travel down the upper respiratory pathway, check out the lungs and gas exchange, figure out the mechanics of breathing, and finally wrap up with protecting your respiratory health.
Section 1. Why do we breathe? It's all about your body's massive need for cellular energy.
So, you know how a car absolutely needs fuel to run, right? Well, your body is no different. It literally needs oxygen to survive. Respiration is just the biological process of bringing that oxygen in to break down glucose molecules in every single one of your living cells. This generates energy, specifically in the form of a molecule called ATP. But here's the catch. Using this energy creates a toxic waste product called carbon dioxide. So, your respiratory system acts as this highly specialized network that brings that life-saving oxygen in and forcefully pushes that harmful carbon dioxide out.
Now, anatomically speaking, the organs and tissues that make this whole gas exchange possible are basically divided into two zones. We have the upper respiratory tract, starting up at the nose and mouth, and the lower respiratory tract, which houses your windpipe and the lungs. Let's actually zoom in on how air travels this path.
Section 2. The upper respiratory pathway. Let's trace the intake route.
So, first up, air enters right through your nose and nostrils. Tiny hairs in there act as your first line of defense, filtering out stray dust and dirt, while a whole network of blood vessels actually warms and moisturizes that incoming air to match your body temperature. Pretty cool, right? From there, it passes into the pharynx, which is basically a hollow space in your throat. Then through the larynx, or your voice box, where the air can vibrate your vocal cords so you can speak. Finally, it drops straight into the trachea, also known as the windpipe. And a fascinating little detail here, the trachea is held open by these rigid, C-shaped cartilaginous rings, which makes sure the tube stays completely expanded and doesn't just collapse on itself.
But wait, your throat is a shared pathway, right? It handles both the air you breathe and the food you eat. So how does the body keep them straight? Well, it all comes down to the epiglottis. This elastic little cartilage flap acts as an absolute essential mechanical switch. When you're just breathing normally, it stays open so air goes into the windpipe. But the second you swallow food, boom, the epiglottis folds tightly over the windpipe, sending your food down to the stomach instead. Actually, if you've ever wondered why you start violently coughing if you're talking while eating, it's because talking forces this switch open. That lets food particles accidentally slip into your respiratory tract, triggering an immediate cough reflex to get them right back out.
Moving on to Section 3, the lungs and gas exchange. This is where the magic really happens.
The trachea goes straight down into the chest and splits into two tubes called the bronchi, with one entering each lung. Once inside those soft, spongy lungs, the tubes branch out, honestly kind of like an upside-down tree, into smaller and smaller tubes called bronchioles. Ultimately, these bronchioles end in clusters of tiny, balloon-like single-celled air sacs called alveoli. And get this, between both lungs, you're packing somewhere between 300 and 400 million of these microscopic alveolar sacs.
Now, what's really interesting here is if you try to visualize this microscopic process like a bustling airport, the oxygen molecules you just breathed in are basically passengers on millions of tiny planes flying into your body. They land and travel down the trachea and bronchi, which act as the airport runways. Then they finally arrive at the alveoli, which are your airport gates. Right outside these single-cell gates are tiny blood vessels called capillaries, waiting around like taxis. The oxygen passengers hop right into the capillary taxis to be driven out to all your body's tissues. And at the exact same time, carbon dioxide molecules hop out of those taxis, move back through the alveoli gates, and fly out of your body when you exhale. It's just a stunning feat of biology. Let's just pause for a second to appreciate some totally mind-blowing trivia about these organs. Did you know the lungs are literally the only organs in the human body that can float on water? Yeah, they are that spongy and light. Also, your lungs aren't actually perfectly symmetrical. The right lung has 3 lobes and is noticeably larger and heavier than the left lung, which only has 2 lobes. Why the difference? Well, the left lung has to leave enough room in your chest cavity for your heart. And here's the craziest part, if you were to flatten out all those millions of microscopic alveoli, the total surface area would be between 50 and 75 square meters. To put that into perspective, that's a massive, massive surface area dedicated entirely to keeping your blood constantly oxygenated.
Section 4. The mechanics of breathing. Let's look at the actual engine powering this whole thing. So it turns out your lungs don't really have their own well-developed muscles to pull air in by themselves. They act a lot more like simple balloons. To inflate them, they completely rely on the diaphragm. That's a powerful, dome-shaped muscle located just beneath the lungs, separating your chest cavity from your abdomen. And there's this beautifully simple physical inverse relationship happening here. During inhalation, your diaphragm contracts and flattens downward. This increases the overall volume inside your chest cavity, which lowers the air pressure inside and creates a literal vacuum that physically pulls air in from the atmosphere. Then, during exhalation, the diaphragm relaxes and naturally moves back upward, decreasing that chest volume, increasing the pressure, and forcing that carbon dioxide-filled air right back out of your body. And a normal, healthy person completes this entire mechanical cycle of inspiration and expiration effortlessly, about 16 to 20 times every single minute. It's a continuous, rhythmic pumping happening right now as you're listening to this explainer, mostly entirely involuntarily. You don't even have to think about it.
Section 5. Protecting your respiratory health. Let's talk about defending those airways.
See, your respiratory tract is constantly defending itself against dry air and harmful microscopic particles. Your trachea and bronchi are completely coated with sticky mucus and tiny hairs called cilia. The mucus acts a lot like flypaper, right? It traps all the fine bits of dust, germs, and pathogens that somehow manage to slip past the hairs up in your nose. Then, the cilia act like a microscopic escalator. They continuously beat in this wave-like ascending motion, literally sweeping that trapped dirt and mucus up and out of your airways right in your throat so it can be safely coughed out or swallowed. It's an amazing self-cleaning mechanism.
But, your body's built-in defenses definitely need your active help. Here are some absolute crucial, everyday actions you can take to support your respiratory health. First, and for sure the most obvious, avoid smoking and vaping pollutants. These introduce harmful chemicals that directly damage those hard-working cilia we just talked about. Second, stay hydrated. Drinking plenty of water keeps the mucus in your lungs thin and much easier for the cilia to clear out. Third, exercise regularly to keep your breathing muscles, like your diaphragm and your intercostal chest muscles, strong. And finally, prevent respiratory infections from taking root in the first place by simply washing your hands frequently and staying up to date on your vaccinations.
All right, we've covered the structural pathways, the microscopic gas exchange, and the mechanical muscles that make it all function so flawlessly. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. Next time you take a deep breath, will you think about the millions of microscopic passengers you just invited inside? It really is a wondrous, continuous exchange you're having with the universe around you. Thank you so much for diving into this explainer with me, and hey, stay curious.